Thank you for joining us this afternoon for our brief overview of the California Department of Public Health Directive and the reporting details of the in-person instruction registration and logging in process for this initial cycle. We're thrilled to have you all on board, and thank you for making time on such short notice. We know that the timeline is quick, and we wanted to make sure that we got some information out to you to make this process as smooth as possible, recognizing that in this first round, there will be some bumps that we'll need to smooth along the way. That said, next slide, please. Just wanted to quickly introduce ourselves with the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. You'll see here I'm joined by Tom Armelino, our Executive Director at the California Collaborative, and I am Suji Shin, Deputy Executive Director of the CCEE. And we have been asked at the direction of the California Department of Public Health to provide some support through our county offices so that we can support this registration process. So I'm going to hand it over to Tom to provide us a little bit of context about the public health order and then walk in through the next steps in registering.
Thank you, Suji. Next slide, please. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So we will set a little bit of context for you. So the January 14th California Department of Public Health Directive requires every LEA, includes school districts, county offices, and charter schools, as well as private schools, to submit data about how student instruction is provided. And specifically what you'll be asked to report starting on Monday is in-person instruction. And you'll be asked, as you'll see a little bit later in the presentation, to make a decision on trying to identify for all of your schools, not individually at this point, just overall, where you're providing in-person instruction, or if you're providing hybrid, or if you're, as well as if you're providing cohorts, or if you're providing distance learning only. Next slide, please. So on behalf of the California Department of Public Health, CDPH, the CCE is supporting this data collection process to host what they'll refer to as a school reopening GIS map, which you'll be able to see through the California Safe Schools for All Hub. So we'll encourage you folks, when this goes live, you'll see that your data will be uploaded into a GIS map that'll be located on that School Hub page. To support that effort, what we have done through the CCE is we've asked our county offices of ed to reach out to each of the entities within their counties to help you register and to make sure that we get this first data submission process moving forward. So one of the things that we want to request of you is, as you're trying to troubleshoot, or if you have specific questions, that you reach out directly back to your county office, not directly to us. So that way your county office can try to help you at that local level. If they cannot do that, then they are reaching back to us, and we're getting back to them as quick as possible to make sure that we're able to get your questions answered as soon as we can. Next slide, please. So I want to walk you through a little bit of this step-by-step overview of the registration process, and Suji, I think, is going to take that.
Thank you, Tom. And as a quick reminder, I see some questions coming in. Please do feel free to submit your questions in that Q&A section. We'll try to address as many as we can online. And if not, if we cannot, we will make sure that we respond and include those in the materials that we will be both posting and sending out to all of you following this presentation today. All of the materials will be found on our CCE site. We'll have a recording of today's session, as well as the slides and any kind of questions and responses that we have available to you within an hour of the webinar. So coming back to our kind of step-by-step guide of registration, all of you should have received through our county offices both the link, the registration link, as well as an access code. The access code is a code for the California site, so will be the same across all of our, across any entity. Next slide, please. So once you go into that link and enter in your access code, you will have the opportunity to appoint a source of contact. And that means you'll be filling out your name, email, and phone number. Now, this person will be the point of contact for the school or district or county office. And so please do keep that in mind. Any subsequent notifications, additional email registration links will be going to that person at that address. As a quick question, there have been some questions about whether or not multiple people could register for a single entity. And the response is that yes, they can. You can go in separately and fill in this information. However, you will need to, the coordination will need to be done between those individuals to ensure that the data is submitted, and if that there's only one submission of data at each during each submission period. So that said, once you complete the information, and again, it's just the name, email address, name and email address, then you will get within 24 hours a response from the ArcGIS notification team. And it will, that again, the title of the subject line of that email will be an invitation to join ArcGIS online organization. You see it right there. And the email will look something like this. We've highlighted sort of some key pieces of information that you will find in that email. That first is the reopening status form. That will be the link to where you will then continue to submit information once registration is complete. You will have that activation link to do so, as well as a unique username. Now, next slide, please. Once you have that information and you go follow that link, you will be able to complete your registration using your unique ID by creating a new password the way you do with many other sites. Next slide, please. So once that is done, then and the registration is complete, then you will be using that link, you will be redirected to the reopening status survey or data collection site. And again, that is the site at which you that all LEAs will be, and LEAs, charters, private schools will be submitting their data on the status of reopening of their schools every other week. And as a reminder, the cadence of the data submission process is every other Monday, unless the Monday happens to be a holiday and then falls on that Tuesday, by 5 p.m. on each of those data collection windows, starting this Monday, January 25. So if I could hop out, Sarah, if I could go ahead, thank you. So just to complete this process, I just wanted to share for all of you what that site looks like once you're in this space. And again, this is a staging space only. It is not active yet, but you will have the option of going in once you have your site to select whether you are reporting as a district, a charter school, a private school, or if your school or district is not found. So for example, if you are a district, then there are slightly different responses available. So you select your school county, and you can begin selecting your information. You can type in and it will start, for example, auto-filling for you, or you can select from that drop-down menu. Just select this first one. Then from there, it gives you then the information to select whether or not you, your school district or kind of county office program name. So again, selecting from this window, the school district. And just again, select random school district here. And then your data collection submission choices are quite simple. So it is really to identify the primary mode of instruction. So where a 50% or more of your instruction to students is provided, whether it's through in-person instruction, again, with those definitions there of being provided full-time, and that is whether it's provided for all grades served by your school district, private school or charter, or only in specific certain grade spans. So again, whether you are providing in-person instruction for K-12 if you're a K-12 district, or if you're only providing in-person instruction for your 2nd through 5th graders, that you would select in-person instruction is provided full-time. Now, if you're providing in-person instruction only part-time, that hybrid model, again, including whether or not that mode is used for all grades or for certain grades. So if you have your K-12, all students are coming in person for half their instructional period every week, and the other time through distance learning, or whether that's K2 only, you would select the second option for the hybrid model. And then that third option is that there is no in-person instruction or services that are being provided, and that you, in this case, select distance learning only. There are a couple of additional follow-ups. So again, you only select one of these radio click buttons, identifying that primary mode of instruction that is being offered through your LEA or private school. And then there are additional questions about whether or not there is, for example, at least one school in your district that is offering full-time instruction in 1 grade or more, whether students are currently being served on campus through the cohort guidance issued by the Department of Public Health, and then this final question of whether or not your COVID-19 safety plan has been posted. I'm noting that the safety plan must be posted by February 1st. Now it looks similar again for the other options. Just walking through quickly for our charter schools. Again, selecting that county, you can go in and through identifying then the school district or county office within that county that you are authorized that you are located in, and then the school name and the opportunity to either to select from that roster as well. That will then identify, self-populate automatically populate the location of your charter school. And again, same questions here around the primary mode of instruction that is provided the charter, as well as operational grade levels. And then the question again regarding whether or not there is 1 grade in your school that is offering full-time instruction, whether there are students being served through cohorts as identified in the cohort guidance, and then question about whether or not that school safety plan has been posted. Finally here, for our private schools, again, same process that you can see, looking very similar to the charter school process in terms of the questions, both in that primary mode of instruction, as well as the following, the grade levels being served in your private school, and then whether or not, again, there is at least 1 grade being offered full-time instruction, cohort guidance, and whether or not the school safety plan is being posted. We'll get to this in a later section, but if your school or district is not found, then you would go select this 4th radial button, identify the county that you are in, and you must submit the information around the county that you are in order to then type in the name of your here if your school or district is not found. And that will then register your school or district so that it is part of the database moving forward. So I'm going to pause there now and go back into our presentation. So there was it. I think we, that was step 7 there. I think walking through then the various mechanisms that we have for completing that reopening status survey, depending on whether, again, you're responding as a district, as a charter school, or a private school. And then finally, to just make sure that we're all aware of the timelines and the short timelines that we are operating under, the school reopening status data collection site will be up and running as of 12:01 a.m. on Monday, January 25, and that the timeline, the deadline for submission is that same Monday at 5 p.m. And again, as a reminder that it is every county office of education, district, charter school, and private school that is now being required to submit their reopening status every other Monday. Again, unless that Monday falls on a holiday, in which case it is that following Tuesday in accordance with that January 14th public health order.
And then the last piece here is obviously the deadline is for that day. For the first piece is 5 o'clock that day. And so it is really important for folks to make sure that you've registered at least 24 hours prior to 12:01 on Monday, the January 25th. So that's why we're doing it today, to make sure that everyone makes the effort to make sure that they register. We recognize we're going to go through some questions and answers, but the number one question that we continue to receive is if folks can't find themselves in the drop down. And so Suji has just walked you through, if you saw that specific slide in that button where it talked about where if you can't find what you need to do there. So we try to make sure that we're very clear on that as you're able to go back in, click the county where you're supposed to be located, and then you're able to type that in. If you have any issues or troubles with that, we need you to let your county office know, right? And then we can go ahead and try to help troubleshoot. That's the most important piece that we need to try to get done today as early as possible so folks can get registered. We're getting some other questions too that we'll do our best to try to address that are in the question and answers, but I think specifically folks are trying to ask more what types of phone numbers. That really is up to you, right? So if you are the numbers and who you're choosing to put that information in, right, is going to be designated at that LEA level. So if you choose to, whoever you choose to have do that will be that person, and they'll be the one who continues to get the information back in emails, questions about this is due again 2 weeks from now. Folks will get an email back that will remind them that that's coming, but it will come to that individual. So you'll need to be conscious of that, as well as passwords and what other phone numbers you choose to have on there, right? Those phone numbers will be available, right? So if you make sure that that's a phone number that you're comfortable with sharing. So with that, we're going to walk through a couple of these frequently asked questions. I did want to start, we'll go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Even before I do this piece, because I know we just addressed this in that last slide too. We've had some questions about, just to remind the county offices. County offices is, under the county, you'll see that you're listed under the district button. So once you put the county in there and you go to the district, on the next side, you'll find the County Office of Education. You'll also find ROPs. They are a separate program, right, that will need to complete this information. And then the other question too is around charters, which I think we'll get to that as well too. So I know we've already answered the questions on this slide. So next slide, please. So Suji will walk you through this piece again, because this is the question I think that we've been getting the most.
Yeah, so again, I think this is the bulk of the questions we've been getting about this initial registration. So I wanted to spend a few minutes just to make sure that the video is very, very clear on how to do this. If your school or district does not appear in that drop-down list. So in that section, then you would go over into that right-hand radial click button and select school or district not found. Once you do that, I think some of you may be kind of skipping to that box where you type in the name of your school or district, but you must go in and select the county that you're located in. Now, once you identify the county that you're located in, it will allow that the type in form in order for you to type in the name of your school or your district, so that that will then be included moving forward. Next slide. Tom, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Suji. So the next question is, what do we do if we find private schools or charter schools that we know are closed or not in our county? So what we recognize is in the data, right, that there will be errors within the data. We're already finding that. For example, some folks are not able to find their information, or there may be some other information that is old. So we will get that cleaned up. So as you're putting, if your school isn't in there or your LEA, and we're updating that will get updated, and that will be fixed going forward. And then as we look after the first submission that happens on Monday, we'll be able to go back and clean up that data. Also we'll be following up with our county offices as if they already know specifically of some schools or other charter schools that may have already been closed, and we'll go ahead and follow up with them to make sure that those are no longer in the database. Next slide, please.
So the next set of questions around data submission. If you are a district, county office, or state that sponsors a charter school, we submit the data for our schools as well as the charter schools. And the response to that is each charter school will need to register and submit their reopening separate from their district, county, or state sponsor. So again, individually for each charter school.
And that same thing would occur for, as we mentioned, with ROPs as well. They would do those separately. The other question is, if we are a district or county office that has several programs on one school site, do we submit the data overall for the school or by program? And the data would be reported overall as one total for all your schools and not by an individual program. So as you saw in the information, you're going to have to identify if you have, wherever you're doing 50% or more of, whatever you're doing the majority for. So if you were a county office and you have several programs in several schools, you have to look at those in totality and then make a decision as to which of the reopening status makes the most sense. Next slide, please.
And again, just to follow up on that, I think I just want to make sure, I see some questions coming in regarding the fact that for districts, for example, that you may have a combination of all of the three instructional modes happening across the schools in your district. And again, focusing on where is the majority, or how is the majority of instruction to all of your students being delivered, and really asking districts to make that selection on where the majority of instruction is happening. This question here, do we provide reopening data for preschools? And the response to that is no, not at this time.
If a non-classroom based charter school provides some instruction at a school, what category would they fall under? So non-classroom based charter schools would report in the category of distance learning. But if they are serving groups of students that qualify under the cohort category provided in CDPH guidance, they would choose this status as well. So just remember, and again, this will be very self-explanatory when you fill out the survey, you're going to have to make a decision overall around if you are providing in-school instruction majority, if you're doing it through distance learning or hybrid. Cohorts is separate from any of those. So you obviously could be doing one of those three. You could be doing all of them, but you choose the way you're doing the majority. And if you're also doing cohorts, you would choose that as well. And charter schools could do the same thing.
Great. So we have some resources here that will be included in the links, but I think we might, Tom, if it's maybe go through and try to address some of the additional questions that are coming up in as well. So We'll try to go back and forth and address as many of the questions as we can we see identified. I think we are hearing from some folks is that if they've already registered, do they need to do that again? No, if you registered upon receiving the link and access code from your county office yesterday, that's it for now. The next step will be then following the completion of that registration, Monday, when the data collection site goes live, then for you to go in with your new account information. And again, as we showed, identify that mode of instruction and the additional follow-up questions for your school, charter, or district.
I think the other question is some folks are suggesting they may not have got the link or the access code from their county office. If that's the case, I'd encourage you to reach back directly to your county office so that you can make sure you can get access to that. We also, I think we're getting some questions that maybe are getting merged with some of the other reopening webinars and other things that you've seen that we're not, able to answer today. The one question I think we're also getting is, if I've already been open or something, do I have to do this? Everyone has to do this. This is a new directive, right? So, and this is the very first initial stab at being able to get that data. So yes, everyone who's been identified has to do it. So I think that's the other key question. Suchi, any other questions specifically?
Yeah, I think I'm also seeing a question about, the changing of the mode of instruction over time. And yes, I think the idea would be that when you come back in 2 weeks, if that mode of instruction has changed, then that would be your opportunity to update that information then.
Yeah, I think the other question you're getting is some folks might be in different counties, right? And so what we would suggest is that if you have a CDS code, right, wherever your CDS code is in the county, wherever it is that you're sponsored, for example, is where you should report your information. We've also had that same question around private schools. So if you have multiple private schools, right, that if it's under one CDS code, you should submit it as well. If it's not, then you would do that for every private school based upon the county where that private school would exist.
I'm seeing several questions here about how to select the primary mode of instruction if you have, again, both in-person and hybrid learning going on in the same campus. And the response to that is, if there is any full-time in-person instruction happening, then again, for that majority, then that's how you determine that selection. So it really is, again, across, whether it's like for your for a campus or across the entire district, where the majority, again, of learning is happening for your students.
I think there's also been some questions if they registered already, right? Can they go back and change that? And when you get that email, you can respond back when you got that original registration, and you can respond back there and be able to change that information if you want going forward. We're also getting some questions, is the link on the State School Hub or where? No, the link is not, because the link is not active yet. And so the information at this point needs to come through your county office, and we provided them with that initial link as well as that code so that folks can be able to go in at that local level to be able to register. So you'll need to go through that process.
I'm also seeing a few questions about the time period for which the submitter should be thinking about in terms of data submission. It is not a prospective submission. So that said, it's not about where you think you're going to be in the coming weeks. It is really about where your schools are at that moment when you are submitting that information.
Yeah, another question for county offices who've been really gracious to help us is, after the initial submission of the data on Monday, we are asking county offices, and we will be providing you with a link for you to be able to go and look at the data within your own counties to determine if anybody's been missed or did not submit the information, so that you can reach back to them and help them if they need to in order to make sure that they get registered. So that will be coming from the CCE, and we'll be following up with you very likely by the end of today, if not on Monday. Yeah, I think there's another question about the emails from county offices. Did it go to the superintendent only? I think very likely I would have the county offices. Again, if each county offices may be doing it a little bit differently. So I would encourage, if you're not getting the link, if you're not sure where this information is, if you could please reach back to your county office, that would be helpful.
Some questions here about whether or not the Monday submission dates are set. As of right now, again, this is following the January 14 California Department of Public Health order, and so which outlines it's an every other Monday cadence of data collection. And so again, it would, regardless of whether or not, I think the question here is like whether you're on break, if it's like a spring break for the school or district, it really does follow that kind of every other Monday, unless it is a state holiday, in which case then it would fall into that following Tuesday for the data collection process.
Yeah, and once again, just a reminder, I think folks again are asking if we're open or we haven't been open, do we have to do this? It doesn't matter if you're open or not open. Every LEA has to complete this initial survey, and we'll need to continue completing it going forward based on this public health directive.
A few questions here about whether or not the safety plan will be posted through this site. No, at this point, the only question is whether or not you have it posted on your site and that it's available, not whether or not there is no posting through this submission process. And again, recognizing that this is whether it's posted as of now, and that the site, the safety plans are not required to be posted yet until February 1st, and recognizing that those are different deadlines, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think another question about every 2 weeks, if our data doesn't change, do we have to do this again? The intent is you would update the data, right? So if you reported, you'll have to do it each time. So yes, you will have to do it again. That way you can make sure that it's the most accurate at that time. So even if it doesn't change, you'll just submit it again.
I think someone's asked about whether there is a Word or document version of the survey. And again, it is not quite live yet. What we're trying to do is put together some reference materials, including the slide deck and frequently asked questions that we will have posted up through our site and send out through all of the registrants here today, as well as back out to the county office as well, to provide support in that way.
So I think there was I'm not sure I understand the question completely, but there was a question if we have stable cohorts for in-person services, but not in-person hybrid, what would we choose? So remember that, think of cohorts separately from those first three categories. So you first have to determine, what's the majority of what you're providing for students? Is it in school? Is it through a hybrid model, or is it through distance learning? And then in addition to that, you would put the information in regarding if you have cohorts. I think the other question is the site open for registration? Yes, it is. So if you have that information, you can register now.
I think I'm also getting some folks saying that the data collection site is not letting them enter, and that is correct. That site will not actually be open for collecting the data itself until 12:01 a.m. on Monday morning.
Yeah, there's another question too, and I want to be really clear that this webinar today is specific to this reopening database, if you will. So there's a question on here about if we were open or not, and are we now, or can our schools now open? Right, that is not something that we are speaking to specifically. You need to continue to follow the public health information within your county in regards to if you're purple or red, or specifically where you may be in regards to that. And when it comes to school opening, that's not any information that is tied directly to this database.
And some questions about the definition of full-time as related to the number of hours served. It's not the definition of full-time for, in-person instruction is not pegged to a number of hours, but rather around the kind of the instructional mode that you are using within the hours that you are serving students.
Yeah, a couple other questions too. There, again, another question regarding charter schools. So if you're a school district, for example, and you sponsor multiple charter schools, each charter school will need to go in and complete this separately. You wouldn't be reporting specifically for all of your charter schools, nor would you, if you're a district, combined, do this one time for your district and your charter schools as a whole. You would do it for the district, and each of those charter schools will need to do it separately. The other questions we're getting is mainly from some county offices if there'll be a Word document or a PDF version. And so, as we mentioned too, is our goal would be we are going to reach back to county offices and provide them as clear as information as we can, right? That will speak specifically to the survey, as well as after our webinar today, we will be posting the webinar that you see that we're on today, as well as some of the question and answers. So we'll do our best to make sure that people have that access. We've had some folks reach out to us prior that we're not going to be able to be part of the webinar today too, so they will be able to go back up and watch it after we're done today.
I think there are a few questions around the GIS mapping that we mentioned as well. And again, that will sit on the California Department of Public Health Safe Schools for All site. You see there that fourth bullet, the Safe Schools for All Hub site. And they are the ones generating and maintaining, again, a geographic mapping of school status across the state.
The other question I think we're getting is folks are talking about that they were open and then went to hybrid and then they closed because of something winter break or the color, but they plan to be going to a different status in the near future. You have to report what you are as of Monday, September 25th. So even if you plan to change 2 days later on the submission for Monday, it will be where you're at currently. And then 2 weeks from now, if your status changes, you would then share that when you're able to put the data in again.
And I hope we've answered this now, since this is an earlier question, but the question was if 25% of your students come in person for instruction and the rest attend through distance or remote learning, what option should I choose? And in that case, if it's 25% are coming in person and 75% remote, then it would be then that distance learning option to describe the primary mode of instruction.
Yeah, we're getting some other questions. What if we doing one thing in our elementaries and we're doing something different in our secondary? It's whatever you're doing the majority of. So you'd have to look at your grade levels and your students as a whole, right? And wherever you have the majority of your students receiving instruction is what you would choose.
Right. There's a question here, I believe, from a district. Is there a requirement to report separately for each individual school in the district? And the answer to that is no, it's not by individual school site. It's by LEA. So for the district, it would be sort of at the district overall across your school sites.
Yeah, the other question is, what if we're providing some in-person services, but it's not instructionally based? What you would choose. So you need to choose based on the instruction that you're providing. So However you're providing instruction is what you would choose. If you're providing some other services that maybe, for example, if they fall under the cohort guidelines, then you could provide those under that cohort section.
Question here about point of contact and, you know, can a single point of contact ultimately be points of contact for multiple entities? So for example, for, you know, more than one charter school, yes, I think again, those are, we'll leave that up to the agreements that you have with your charters across your sites to identify the appropriate point of contact to be submitting the information. I think for our county office folks and district folks who may be supporting their private schools and anybody who may have joined a little bit late, we are still receiving questions about what to do if you do not find your school or district listed. And that has been our most frequently asked question. And again, in that option, in that first sort of set of questions, selecting that radial button on the right-hand side, which indicates school or district not found. And then from there, you must identify the county office that you are located in or the county that you're located in. And once you select that county, it will unlock that text box in order for you to submit or type in the name of your school or district. And that will then be used to include in future generations of the database.
Yeah, still getting a lot of questions about, you know, what if some grades are this or what if some grades are that? Remember, you have to choose whatever the majority of your students are. What are you doing for the majority of your students? That's where you'd have to make that decision. At this high level, that's what they're asking for in the directive.
Again, somebody wanted to clarify one submission per school or one per district for a district. Again, reporting at that district level. So it is the district overall, not by individual schools within a district.
Yeah, we're getting some questions too around like childcare programs, things of that nature, like cohorts. Remember, you have to make sure you do whatever it says under the cohort, the directives, right? So whatever that cohort definition is that already exists through CDPH is how you have to define if that's appropriate for a cohort or not.
Right. Some concerns about the time frame. Yes, we recognize that it is an abbreviated time frame for having access to the site, and then the requirement to submit the data by 5 p.m. on Monday. That will not be the case moving forward. So once it goes live on Monday, it will then continue to be open, and so you will be able to submit earlier in future data collection periods.
Yeah, and just clarifying again that what's being required here in this public health order does not have anything to do with the new funding or any of the other trailer bill language that speaks specifically to what's being pursued on that level. This speaks to right now for every LEA has to submit this information now.
And again, for those whose schools or districts were not listed, they're going through that process I just outlined: school district not found, identifying the county, and then typing in the name of your school or district. It will update it for future data submissions. So if you go back in again, I think I'm hearing some questions about, I'm going back in again right now, and I still do not see my school or district, and that won't be the case. It will be for the next submission that it will be updated.
Yeah, the other piece too, we're getting a fair amount of questions about the safety plans when they're posted. Really encourage folks, if you haven't visited the California Safe Schools for All Hub, you really should take a look at that. That answers these questions specifically. We can't answer that for you. That will have to be posted to your website. So that is where it will need to be posted. And when it asks for that information in the survey, it's not because you have to have it done. The deadline is still February 1st. It's just for those who do have it done and have already posted it, where they can choose yes, and then they can put the link to their website, so that would be that would show up on that Safe Schools for All hub website.
I think I'm going to just share this one more time. So I think I'm receiving a few more questions about this as well. When you are selecting that primary mode of instruction, this is where you select where 50% or more of your instruction to your students is being provided, whether it's across all of your school sites in a district or in your private school or in your charter. Again, that it's in person, hybrid, so it's in-person instruction is provided only part-time. Or no in-person instruction or services are being provided, that it's only being provided through distance learning only. So this is where you select one of the three to describe that primary mode of instruction for your district, your charter school, or your private school. From there, the question is then, is there at least one school in your district, or in this case, offering full-time instruction, 1 grade or more? And then the question about, whether students are being served on campus through the cohort guidance, that is a separate question. So you can have one of these selected, as well as serving students through cohorts, in addition to having hybrid only, for example. I think I've got some questions in there about whether or not this could be selected as well as one of the 3 instructional modes. And the instructional modes are only to identify across these 3 what the primary mode of instruction is on your site.
Yeah, and just so you know, that you have to make that decision, right, based on your best judgment, right, based on what you know is being provided for your students. The other question is, are we completing this for every school in the district? You're completing this as a totality for all the schools. So for example, there isn't a place to go and do it individually for all your schools, but if you have 10 schools within your district, you have to look at what's happening as a majority over all of those 10 schools, completing it as one.
Okay. So again, I think lots of questions coming in about timeline of this. And again, as a reminder, this site will go live on Monday morning at 12:01 a.m. And the data submission process, or data submission for this initial collection period, it has a deadline of 5 p.m. on Monday. If you have not received your login information access code, please do reach out to your county office. I think we have also had some questions about what do you do if you see a name of a school that you know has closed, and please follow back up with your county office and let them know that kind of confirmation of school closures, or kind of attribution of schools to the appropriate district if they're listed in the wrong district or in the wrong county. That will flow up through your county offices to get that through into the database.
Yeah, again, the same question, I think it keeps coming up. When do you update the data? You update the data every 2 weeks. So whatever you're doing as of Monday, the 25th, is what you'll report. That could change 2 days later. You don't need to go back until the next submission, which would be 2 weeks later from then. And that's when you would update the data. Again, holidays, just if there's a holiday on a Monday, then it would switch to the Tuesday afterwards. And again, just remember too that this is effective January 5th, and it's just every 2 weeks, and folks will get a reminder when that data should come automatically to who the person is registered to be able to do it. The other question is someone going to send me a username and a password? No. Remember, you have to get that through that link that the county office has. It will allow you to go in and register, and where you'll create your own passwords. And Sergi, you seen anything else specifically?
I think that's about if we see, again, I'm still getting questions in about what do you do if your school or district is not located in this. And just gonna, as a very quick reminder, say that you'll have to click on school or district not found. You must enter in the county that you are located in. And then from there, it will allow you to type in the name of your school or district. And again, I think for our county office teams who are listening to this now, that is the #1 question that we are getting. So we will make sure that we include that in our materials and have that front and center. But if you could, advise folks who are reaching out to you that they must enter in that county, the name of the county that they are located in. That is what unlocks the type in field. So I think with that, it looks like, again, we do have a lot of questions, but I feel like I think we've addressed most of them here. We will take a closer look and make sure that we are addressing any that we have not been able to address during this session. As stated, we will have the recording of this as well as the links to the PowerPoint deck and any ancillary materials posted through the CCEE-ca.org website, as well as emailed out to anybody that is registered here. We will also send those out through all of our county offices to make sure that they have those to refer to and send out to their districts, charters, and private schools as well. So,
yeah. Well, again, we want to thank you. We appreciate your time today and appreciate your effort as we move forward. Just reminding folks too is that, we are really gracious and appreciate our county offices helping. We're trying to really keep this at the local level. So if you have not received any of that information, please reach back. If you have specific questions, we really try to encourage you to ask your county office. And if they cannot answer that question, they can reach out to us and we will get back to them so that we can make sure that we can be responsive and have the ability to be able to answer the questions as best we can. We will be following up with some information, as we mentioned, to the county offices to be able to support them in that. And that will include a website that they'll be able to go in and check the data. As of Tuesday of next week, we will be posting this webinar as well as some of the other materials that we've referenced. After we complete that, that should be done by the end of the day today. Again, we thank everyone. I guess the last thing I would say is there's a lot of nuance to many of these things, right? All we can suggest, right, folks, in particular, right, is you know what your students are doing. So we ask you to do your best, right? So if you're struggling to answer a question, try to get the question answered. But if you have to make decisions at your local level, use your best judgment as to where you feel the majority of your students are being served. And that's the information that you would submit.
Thank you all again. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your work. We are trying to do our best to help smooth this out on behalf of the Department of Public Health and the state. Thank you again for joining us and have a great rest of your day.